Hello, my fellow chemists. In today's video, we're going to take a look at converting within the English system of measurement. This is listed as an intermediate difficulty level video, and that is primarily because it assumes that you have some background knowledge of the factor label system and just converting units within word problems. So that's why it's listed as intermediate. If you have trouble or don't remember the factor label system or want to take a look at converting within the metric system, which is where I taught you how to use the factor label system, I'll put a link to the video up in the top corner there so that you can take a look at that. But today is going to be all about the English units of conversions. So let's take a look at these English units and why they are what they are and how they were derived. So as I mentioned before, there really is no rhyme or reason to the relationships between these English units. So you have 12 inches equals 1 foot, then it's 3 feet equals 1 yard, and 1,760 yards equals 1 mile. Those are the English conversions for length. Why are they what they are? It doesn't make much sense. I'll talk a little bit about that as far as how they were developed, but they don't make a lot of sense. For mass, it's 16 ounces in 1 pound and 2,000 pounds in 1 ton. And then for volume, it's 2 pints is equal to 1 quart, and 4 quarts are equal to 1 gallon. So, how are some of these terms derived and figured out? Well, in the late 1700s and early 1800s, France and Britain were kind of having a battle back and forth on what type of measuring system to use. France came up with the metric system, and Britain came up with the English or the imperial system. And if we take a look at just the mile, how did Britain come up with how long a mile was? Well, basically, it's based on 1 mile is equal to 8 furlongs. What is a furlong? A furlong is a length distance that's measured in horse racing. So, really, no rhyme or reason as far as, at least in modern society, why a mile is what it is, but that's how they came up with it. If we take a look at the pound, which is a English mass unit that we're all familiar with. How did the British come up with the pound? Well, in 1303, 1 pound was equal to 7,000 troy grains. What is a troy grain? Well, obviously, it's 1/24th of a pennyweight. And what is a pennyweight? It's the weight of a British penny back in 1303. So again, in today's modern society, it really has no link to it, but the pound kind of stuck around, and that's why we still use it today. But it was originally derived from the weight of a British penny. And then if we take a look at the gallon, which is used a lot, you think of getting a gallon of milk. That was again used. They used to figure out the gallon by the pound that they had previously figured out from the British penny. And a gallon is equal to 10 pounds of distilled water at 62 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, if you have a gallon of liquid, like a gallon of milk, it's going to weigh just about 10 pounds. So a gallon of anything is pretty close to 10 pounds because by definition a gallon is 10 pounds of distilled water at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, and most liquids have densities that are very similar or close to that of just pure water. So let's take a look at how to convert within this metric system. And again, we're going to use the factor label method to do these conversions. So I'm going to shrink the chart down a little bit there, and let's take a look at the first problem here. So it says if you have to drive 8.47 miles to work every day, how many feet do you have to drive? So again, if we take a look, all right, well, what are we converting? What is the conversion that we need to focus on? So we're looking at miles to feet. Okay, so here's miles here, and that shows us how to get from miles to yards. And then here's yards to feet here. So we're going to have to use both of those conversions to solve this problem. So we're going to break it down into two simpler steps. So if you're starting off with 8.47 miles, then we'll draw the line for our conversion factors here. We'll put miles on the bottom so that it cancels out. And then we will put yards on the top. And it is 1 mile for every 1,760 yards. So now our problem is set up so that miles and miles cancels out. And as with all factor label problems, you just multiply across and then you divide up. So we'll take 8.47, multiply it by 1,760, and if we do that, we get 14,907 as an answer, and that is in yards. Now again, that's not the final answer that we want to get. We want to get our answer into feet. So now what we'll do is we'll take our yards, our 14,907 yards. And again, we'll set up the same type of factor label problem. Get our conversion factor ready to go here. Put yards on the bottom and feet on the top so that yards and yards will cancel out. And we see for the conversion factor between yards and feet that for every 1 yard, there are 3 feet. So now our yards and yards will cancel out. We'll multiply across and then divide up. So 14,907 multiplied by 3 gives us 44,721. And then that divided by 1 just stays at 44,721. And that is now in feet. So if we have 8.47 miles and we wanted to convert it into feet, this is how you would break it down into two relatively simple factor label problems using the English conversions that we have on the chart. So let's take a look. This was an example of converting a length. So let's take a look at another example where we're now converting mass in the English system. So I'll just erase everything on here. So for the second problem, it looks at the weight of a bowling ball. So it says that if a bowling ball weighs 12.18 pounds, how many ounces does it weigh? And again, if you're relatively new to this, one thing that's always good is when you look at your problem, just kind of identify what's in the problem. First off, you want to say, okay, am I in the English or the metric system here? Well, I'm starting off with pounds and I'm ending up with ounces. Pounds is English and ounces is English. So this is an English to English conversion. That way you kind of know what conversion factors you're going to need to use. And then you ask yourself, well, am I measuring length? Am I measuring mass? Or am I measuring volume? Well, pounds and ounces are masses, so you're going to be measuring masses in this type of problem. Eventually, there's going to be problems where you're given a mass and a volume. And it's not always just going to be all masses or all volumes or all lengths. So it's kind of important just to kind of make sure that all of the terms you're given and being asked to find, if it's a length, a mass, or volume, and what system that they belong to. It'll just make the overall problem easier for you as we move into the more difficult ones. So if we have 12.18 pounds, and the symbol for pounds is LB, but I actually use PD because using LB, sometimes the L can get mistaken for a 1, so that's why I just use PD. And then we'll put pounds on the bottom so they will cancel out. And we want to see, okay, well, what conversion factor do we have here that will work with pounds? Well, we want to get from pounds into ounces, and we can see right here there's a conversion factor that goes right from pounds to ounces, and it's 16 to 1. So on the top, we'll put ounces. And we can see that for every 1 pound, there are 16 ounces. So the way that we have this problem set up, the pounds and the pounds will cancel out. And we will then multiply across and divide up. As we multiply across, 12.18 times 16 will give us 194.9. And then when you divide that by 1, it just stays 194.9. And the unit that we have for that is ounces, because that's the only unit that did not cancel out. The problem is asking us to convert pounds to ounces, so we got ounces here, so that is the answer to this problem. It was only a one-step problem. So not too hard there for that one. The third and final problem that we'll take a look at for English to English conversions, since we did one for length, we did one for mass, let's take a look at one that deals with volume. So for the last problem here, it says, if you drink 8 pints of beer, how many gallons of beer did you drink? So let's take a look here what we're going to be dealing with. So again, are we in the English to English conversion, an English to metric conversion, or a metric to metric conversion? Well, pints is an English unit and gallons is an English unit. So this is an English to English conversion. And then you want to say, well, okay, well, am I converting length, mass, or volume? Well, pints and gallons are both volumes, so this is a volume conversion problem. So if we start with 8 pints, we draw our conversion factor line. We'll put pint on the bottom. Then let's take a look and see what kind of conversions we can do with a pint. Well, we know that a pint is equal to 1 quart, so that's going to be the first conversion that we're going to use. So we will put a quart on the top, and pints are diagonal, so they'll cancel out, and it says that there is 2 pints for every 1 quart. So now we have the problem set up so that pints cancels out with pints, and we'll be left with quarts. We have to multiply across and then divide up. So 8 times 1 is equal to 8, and then divided by 2 is going to equal 4. So 8 pints is equal to 4 quarts. But that's not the answer that we're looking for, because it wants to know gallons. Well, that's good, because right here is another conversion. That is 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. So now we'll set that up in the second part of the problem. So we have 4 quarts. Put our conversion factor over here. Put our parentheses in. Put quart at the bottom, because that's what we want to cancel out. Gallon at the top. And for every 1 gallon, you have 4 quarts. Okay, so the unit quarts and quarts will cancel out, and then we'll multiply across and divide up. 4 times 1 is 4, and then 4 divided by 4 is equal to 1. So if you were to drink 8 pints of beer in one night, that's equivalent to drinking 1 gallon. Which basically means you're going to have a pretty bad day the next morning. So 8 pints is equal to 1 gallon. All right, so that's it for today's video where we looked at English to English conversions, and then what we're going to move into, the whole purpose for having this video, so now we can look at how to convert back and forth from the English system to the metric system and vice versa. And I'll have some links to those videos, and I hope you learned something today, and I'll see you in the next video.